Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wolf Pack. Now, it feels so good to sit down and record again. The last few videos that you've seen from the channel have been pre-recorded for like quite some time, so it's nice to just sit down and just have a chat. So today we are diving into an age-old discussion, and I just wanted to put my 2 cents into it because I feel like it's something that I'm pretty passionate about and I have a pretty firm stance on it, but I'm not making any drastic changes. Don't worry. I just wanted to make this video because I really want to gauge what all of you think. And I want to ask a bunch of difficult questions and just see, what the overall feedback is before I make any kind of crazy changes. And don't worry, nothing's going to happen overnight. I just, again, want to see where everyone is now that we're going into, 2023 now, into sponsored board game reviews. But let's go ahead and lay down some ground rules before we start today's very polarizing discussion. First off, let's go ahead and make sure we always keep it civil. As always, here on the channel, you are more than welcome to disagree with me. You're more than welcome to agree with me, of course. Doesn't really matter. Just make sure you put it in a civil way. It's a very low stakes, low stress situation. Nothing drastic is going to come out of it. But it would be nice to see some changes made going forward, which is the reason behind this entire video to begin with. And the second thing I also want to point out is I highly recommend that you check out Rodney's video from, I think he did it from Board Game Geek. That was 3 years ago. That video holds true all the way till this day, and he puts some very, very compelling arguments. It is one of the most brilliantly composed, structured, beautiful videos that I've seen around this topic. So make sure you check that out before you watch this one because a lot of topics stem from Rodney's original video. And I also made a comment about it 3 years ago, back when I was a budding content creator making only tutorials. Still am a budding content creator, but I have not changed my views about this topic since then. Even before I was a content creator, when I was solely viewing, watching, and enjoying all these channels, which I still do today, I still have had an unchanging opinion about it. But let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so the fun begins. Previews, let's go ahead and define that first. Previews on my channel and what I think previews are in general are unbiased, objective presentations of a board game. All the previews on my channel are sponsored content, but they have zero opinions attached. On the other hand, every single review that I've done on this channel up till now has always been unsponsored. There's never been a single sponsor for any reviews that I've done because they have opinions attached. So I wanted to make sure those two are separate because when we dive into the future topics today, they're going to, I guess, define the borders and the lines of what we talk about. So previews in general, they perform exponentially less than reviews. And by perform, I mean in terms of like metrics for views. So it makes sense because previews don't have any opinions attached and the creator is more inclined to be robotic. They can't really showcase their full personality because they don't have, especially for me, I am very excited about a game because I do a whole entire screening process before I say yes to a game at all. And when I do these previews, I genuinely am interested in the game. So I want to give my opinion on it, but I separate it because, again, sponsored content, we all know how the board game industry, the niche, feels about that. Now, this brings me to my first point of why I think sponsored reviews are okay. It's because reviews allow us to be more natural, allow us to be more organic, allow us to showcase our opinions and how we truly feel about the game. However, the very, very valid and upfront question is, well, when money's involved and when sponsorships are involved, it's going to compromise the trust that we have in our audience. That is a completely valid worry. Now, this brings me to point number 2, which is a question for you now. Where does the responsibility lie for a sponsored review? Does it lie in the creator or does it lie in the viewer? And for me, I think it's both. I think it's a two-way street. It is up to the creator to withhold our standards, to maintain the trust behind our audience that we've built, which is the reason why I've made this video before I make a change and just do sponsored reviews out of nowhere. Before I do that, I want to make sure I gauge like my audience and see what you all think about it first. I think it's also our job as a creator to maintain this transparency and consistency between the games that review And we shouldn't soften our critiques as well when we get into a sponsored review. That's my thought on it. Now, let me be 1,000% honest with you, and you can, of course, choose to believe me or not. It's fine. But I have zero issues when it comes to explaining my opinions and how I truly feel about a game. If I don't like a game, if there are problems with it, then I'm going to say it. I'm going to back it up with gameplay examples, and I'm going to show you with B-roll and C-roll and so on. If I like a game, I'm not going to hold that back either. And I'm going to go crazy filming it and just showing how good this game is and making it super cinematic because it's really, really fun for me. I literally cannot fake filming a bad game because it is literally impossible for me. It's not fun. It is, I dread the work, I dread the work. And as a creative, I can't hide it. So if I don't like a game, it's really hard for me to hide the B-roll and the fancy cinematic stuff that I do behind showcasing something that isn't good. I've never done it before, and I don't ever want to do it, ever, or plan to, because it's just wrong. Now, on top of that, I am obviously very lucky and very grateful, very fortunate to be able to do part of this as a living. And I don't take any of that for granted. However, with that said, even though I am a gamer, I am also a photographer and videographer. So I don't put all my eggs in one basket and I don't fully depend on what I do here to live. So I have, you see like in the links below, other channels where I kind of spread my wings a little bit more. That sounded really corny. I have other channels where I spread my eggs more. That also did not come out as intended. I do other things, and the skill set that I have in photography and videography that I've culminated can be translated to other fields. So on that note, that's also one reason why I just have zero hesitation when it comes to just stating my opinions about games, because if it's bad, I'm going to say it. If it's good, I'm going to say it. Review, sponsored or not, it's going to be the exact same. But feel free to judge. If I ever do a sponsored review in the future, you are more than welcome to judge how my sponsored reviews compare to my old reviews. Please feel more than welcome. Okay, now at the end of the day, regardless of which reviewer that you decide to watch, you still get, as a viewer, information from that reviewer. Whether you agree or disagree or put a reviewer's opinions in question, you still get information about that game. And it is up to us as a consumer to manage our budget wisely and to make a decision, to make a purchasing decision. Because at the end of the day, creators do not force us to spend money. They influence us and they give us, insight onto what the product is about, but they have zero control over our budget. Because you watched a free review, it doesn't mean that the creator is forcing you to spend anything at all. That decision remains with the consumer. Now, if you're thinking, well, in exchange for a free review, I give creators views and likes and engagement and all these metrics. And obviously, that's something that I value a ton, something that every creator values. But 95%, 98% of all board game content creators can't use those metrics to buy food, gas, rent, right? We cannot exchange views for a housing payment. We cannot exchange likes to put in fuel for our car. And an unfortunate thought that floats around the interwebs quite often is that, well, no one forced the reviewer to do this as a living. No one forced the board game content creator to pursue this full time or to get paid for making board game content. And I can go on about this very invalid point for hours on end, but I'll keep it short to this. And that is, most of us are doing this as a side income anyway. Like, as a viewer, you want those gamers that are passionate enough to take away from other things in order for them to pursue this path of board gaming, right? You want those people that are really, really excited to talk about games. Now, obviously, I'm not going to beat around the bush here and say like money isn't the most important thing here, because, getting sponsored and getting funds is a huge deal. But it also carries a lot more than just, this is money for me to produce a video. You give, especially, up and coming creators, inspiration. When they are given sponsorships, myself included, they feel more inspired to do everything, right? Now you get quality in return for getting a sponsored review. I'm gonna throw some ballpark wild numbers out there, take this with a grain of salt. But let's say a reviewer gets $300 for one video. Now imagine if they did 3 review videos. Now they can get a brand new camera. With the new camera, they get more and more inspired to create better content. On top of that, their overall quality just exponentially increases. What does that do for the viewer? Now, in return, you get a better viewing experience. What does that do for publishers? Well, now more and more people want to see this high quality produced video. So it's like a circle of winningness. The creator gets more inspired, more passionate because now they can allocate more time and more quality to producing better videos. And on top of that, it also alleviates burnout too, because everyone's gonna get burned out doing free videos all the time. In return, because the quality was increased, the views will inevitably go up as well. And back to the publisher, now they get more marketing and they get more eyes on their game. So it's a win-win for everyone across the board. The main thing that's still in question is whether or not you trust that reviewer to maintain their integrity while doing these sponsor reviews. But again, at the end of the day, we have control of that budget, and it's up to us to understand the trends and the consistency of the reviewer that we are putting our trust in. Now, that also leads me to the next point, and that is with making a game. I'm not trying to downplay anything involved with making a game because it's a ton of work, and a lot of it I don't even know anything about. I am so ignorant about the whole board game production process because I'm not involved in it. So I'm not going to make assumptions on them. But what I do know, I have to premise myself so much here because I'm trying to avoid heat because I don't want heat. It's a peaceful discussion. But let's say we make a game, right? In producing a game, you have the designer, the publisher, the 3D modeler, the artist, illustrator, everyone involved in making the game. All those roles, all the way out to the distributor and the retailer, will earn something for producing that game. How come then does a reviewer who, and again, they have zero part in producing the game, but they do have a role in expanding like the breadth of the game or like just having eyes on that game, why does a reviewer who puts in work to expose the game the only person that is not allowed to get paid? Why is it taboo in the board game industry for that specific role? It's interesting too because only in the board game industry that I've seen is where reviews that are sponsored are like so taboo, like they're completely unacceptable, and it's kind of like crazy to think about. Because outside of the board game industry, let's talk about photography, for instance, because, you know, in the photography world, when content creators are given these $3, $4, $5,000 cameras and they're sponsored on top of that, and they make a review and they give their opinions about that set of equipment, it's fine. There is literally zero discussion about why a sponsored review is bad in that area. And they're getting, 5, 10, who knows how much for their sponsored reviews. But when it comes to producing a review for a $50 game, now everything's put into question and it's just not allowed. I think that's one of the main things that really like blows my mind about the board game industry. Okay, by now it's very transparent which side I'm on for sponsored reviews, but even before I was a content creator, before I had anything to gain out of being a sponsored reviewer, I had zero worries or zero care whether or not a review was sponsored because, again, I keep reiterating this point, keep hitting it home, but our wallets are ours and our decisions with, how to spend our funds, it lies with us and will always lie with us. It has nothing to do with the reviewer. Again, the reviewer, yes, they will present a lot of points that are interesting, that may be influencing to us, but we make that decision at the end of the day to say yes to purchasing that, adding to our cart, or no, and just moving on to the next thing. There are also a ton of other factors involved, and the factors just increase with the higher price and the higher value of the item that we want to buy. Now, again, I'm not against any publisher. I'm not attacking anybody at all. The Zero has, again, zero stress behind it, zero stakes behind it. But there are daily instances of when it's just like very strange wording of when publishers will reach out to me personally and then ask to review a game for free in exchange for a copy of the game itself, in exchange for a $50, $75 game. But they get thousands of dollars worth of work and exposure in exchange. So there's a very uneven scale here put into place, and that system is possible because of how taboo sponsored reviews are. They can get by with giving a game for free. In exchange, they get a review video that is worth a lot, exponentially more. Like for me, I have previews and commercials worth in the thousands, and then we'll have reviews, which are, of course, free. And then which one would you lean towards? Right? You would go towards the free side. Who wouldn't? So it makes sense because of the system that we have in place. Okay, with all that said, let me go ahead and summarize today's points. I think sponsored reviews are okay, flat out. That's my opinion on it. Here's why. It's because sponsored reviews are a win-win for everyone across the board. When you sponsor a creator, they can take those funds and they can reinvest into better equipment. Better equipment equals better quality videos. Better quality videos equals a better viewing experience for viewers. More viewers are inclined to watch it, or at least they'll enjoy it more. They'll be more likely to share it. And because of that engagement, because of that appreciation for quality, now that game gets more exposure. So then the publisher also wins as well, and they get more eyes on their game. The inevitable downside to sponsored reviews is putting the reviewer's integrity, their honesty, and their transparency, even like softening down the critique, into question. But again, that is up to us as a viewer to know the trends, the personality, the consistency, and the overall judgment of our viewers, because it's our job as a viewer to make sure that we make wise decisions based on multiple factors and not just one video. The responsibility in questioning that lies in both the creator and the viewer. The creator to maintain that transparency and that honesty, and the viewer to make the best judgments when watching reviews. Number 3, are we okay with reviewers being the only role? And hopefully I'm not being like reviewer centric here, not thinking about other roles that aren't paid, but if not, but at least we're focusing on reviewers today. Are we okay with reviewers being the only role that is not allowed to be paid in the whole game production process? Reviewers obviously don't make the game. There's so much more work involved in making and producing a game, but they are involved. They have a role, a small role at least, or big role, I don't know, depending on how you look at it. But they have a role in exposing the game and showcasing it. If you think Patreon or another third party, some way for viewers themselves to fund creators is the solution for this, I don't necessarily think that is, because that is like a constant thing that is still a little bit unsure, right? You have no control over that. And on top of that, each game is worth a different value, especially games that like have really big marketing budgets. Like that's going to be totally different from a game that has a very, very, small publisher. So to equilibrize that budget and depend on viewers to fund the videos for that, I just don't think it's not a balanced thing for that. Bottom line, I just feel like each game has their own value that you can't necessarily make a balanced scale for Patreon for that. And the final point / question to summarize today: why is it okay for the board game niche to taboo sponsor reviews versus in other niches and other industries like photography, where sponsor reviews are totally fine? So that's it. Just some food for thought, some things for y'all to think about this weekend, or this Friday, whenever this video is put out. But just wanted to put out some views and some arguments behind that, see where it goes. Obviously, nothing's going to change overnight. Nothing's going to change from here till next week or next month. I don't know. Who knows? But I did want to put my 2 cents in there, because if this video somehow encourages people to do sponsor reviews, I'm okay with that. I'm totally fine with that. If we can push that envelope a little further and help out creators, who will in turn help out viewers, who will in turn help out publishers, and make this a win-win for everyone, I don't see why it would hurt to push this envelope a little bit further. So with that said, hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Let me know what you all think in the comments below. Again, let's keep it civil and keep it fun and light, because there's zero strings attached to this video and to this argument. So anyways, have a great weekend, and I will see you all next on a very epic unboxing video. See you then.